So let's begin with the official starting point of when it became apparent that room was being made for new types of corporatized spying companies and militarized companies to acquire new power and new roles. One of them was an executive order issued by the White House and unveiled on March 20th, 2025, so 2 months after Donald Trump's inauguration, the headline of which was "Stopping Waste, Fraud, and Abuse by Eliminating Information Silos." In other words, the problem, according to the new White House, is information is not centralized enough. You have some information over here, segregated over here, some segregated over here, some surveillance data here, some under this agency. And they describe that as wasteful, and what they want to do is to centralize it all under one authority. I personally would prefer that to the extent the government collects data on American citizens, it remain fragmented and siloed and therefore weakened. But the point of this executive order was to describe that as wasteful and to restructure the government to ensure its centralization, meaning its consolidated control under a handful of specific actors who would be in charge of it. Quote, "By the authority vested in me as president, by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered," quote, Section 1, purpose, removing unnecessary barriers to federal employees accessing government data. Just let me emphasize that. And a part of this has to do with trying to empower what was known as Doge, that the idea was we had to ensure that the Doge team wasn't impeded in their ability to collect information, that instead they had access to everything. And so here you see that the idea is to make certain to eliminate bureaucratic duplication and inefficiency by ensuring that there are no more barriers to federal employees accessing government data. I'm not sure if we can highlight that part or not. We'll see in a second, but I wanted to really draw out that language because it seems so bureaucratically benign, but at the same time, it's very candid about what it's attempting to do. It then goes on, Section 3, eliminating information silos. Agency heads shall take all necessary steps to the maximum extent consistent with law to ensure that federal officials designated by the president or agency heads have full and prompt access to all unclassified information, records, data, software systems, and information technology systems. It goes on, quote, agency heads shall take all necessary steps to the maximum extent consistent with law to ensure the federal government has unfettered access to comprehensive data from all state programs that receive federal funding. Moreover, the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary's designee shall receive to the maximum extent consistent with law unfettered access to all unemployment data and related payment methods, including all such data and records currently available to the Department of Labor's Office of Inspector General. Now, like most government programs, this can have a very benign intent, and it's described to appear benign. It's saying, look, there's some inefficiencies. We need to analyze all the data. Unfortunately, the data is all siloed. It's all in different places, and we want to make sure that we eliminate all of the barriers to accessing all of it. We want to make sure that designated entities, whether public like Doge or private like private contractors, no longer experience impediments in collecting all of the information and centralizing it all for whatever purposes they want to use that information. Now, as I said, one of the primary impetus for this was to make sure that the team of Doge that was designed to analyze waste and the like didn't have any further impediments to their ability to get at some of the most sensitive data about American citizens. Here's how CNN reported that in April of 2025. Quote, Doge is building a master database for immigration enforcement, sources say. Staffers from Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency are building a master database to speed up immigration enforcement and deportations by combining sensitive data from access to across the federal government. Multiple sources familiar with the plans tell CNN. Palantir, a Silicon Valley data analytics company co-founded by a Musk ally that has been used by immigration officials before for criminal investigations, is involved in building out the database. The company has long been ingesting and processing data from ICE and DHS sources. The latest endeavor, however, is expected to go further by identifying people with civil immigration violations. Palantir is already a well-known government contractor, including at the IRS, so it would be, quote, a logical choice for the Doge teams to utilize it, a senior IRS official said, adding that, quote, it would be easy to change the scope of existing contracts and pay Palantir to do this stuff. Quote, they're going to take the information we already have and put it into a system, a Trump administration official told CNN about Doge's plans. It will be able to rapidly queue information everyone is converting to Palantir. So that's the Trump administration's motto for what this reform is. Everyone is converting to Palantir, meaning all of this data collection, all of this data mining, all of this access to information is all going to be done through Palantir, through devices and systems created by Palantir, implemented by Palantir, overseen by Palantir. Now, obviously, one reaction is to say, well, this seems like a good idea. I want the government to be able to more readily identify people who are in the country illegally. I want them to more readily identify fraud. And so I have no problem with a system designed to centralize all this information to make it easier to achieve these noble ends. The problem is that is always how expansion of the surveillance state and expansion of the deep state is justified. They always give you a reason why they're doing it for your own protection, why they're doing it for some good cause. All of those programs ushered in the wake of 9/11 and by the Bush and Cheney administration, the Patriot Act, warrantless surveillance on American citizens, the vast elimination of barriers designed to protect the privacy rights of Americans, all of that was justified in the name of finding terrorists more easily. We didn't find terrorists on 9/11, even though we had all the reason and all the evidence and all the data in the world that should have let us find it. We failed to. And so instead of holding people accountable, instead of making sure that we're looking more closely for terrorists, instead of all sorts of other things, we're going to claim that we didn't have enough powers. We didn't have enough spying powers. We didn't have enough data mining powers. And we're going to tell the American people, look, we're going to collect information in a much more aggressive way, including about you. But don't worry, we're just doing it because we want to make sure to keep you safe from the terrorists. That was how the Patriot Act was justified. Yes, we know this seems very extreme. We know this seems like an extraordinary leap in the powers that the US government is supposed to have. But don't worry, it's necessary because the only thing we're going to use this for is for good things. We're going to use it to not to spy on dissidents, not to keep the American population under a microscope. We're going to use it just to make sure that we can catch terrorists and terrorism plots more readily. And if you look at how the Patriot Act has been used ever since it was implemented, ever since that justification was furnished that convinced a lot of people to support it, you will find that only in a small minority of cases has the Patriot Act been invoked in connection with terrorism investigations. It has been used in a wide range of other sorts of efforts to investigate the American people, to keep track of them, to give to law enforcement. I know for the first 10 years, the percentage of cases of actual terrorism investigation that the Patriot Act was used for was extremely small. I'm talking about 10 to 12, 15%. So of course they're going to offer you good reasons why Palantir needs to collect and consolidate all this information under its control. Oh, we're looking for illegal immigrants. We're looking for criminals, and the ability to have all this information under one company and eliminate all the barriers that were there to preserve the privacy rights of Americans from living in an omnipotent surveillance state. Those are bothersome. Those are impediments to the policy goals that we want to achieve. And so don't worry, we're getting rid of all of those. We're going to have it all put under this one company called Palantir. As I said, everyone is converting to Palantir is the exact quote. Now, this didn't get much attention at the time. In the Trump administration, there's constantly all sorts of things going on. You have wars going on. You have attempts to avoid war like in Iran. You have all kinds of new domestic policies. There was controversies about deporting students who criticize Israel. All sorts of things just constantly going around. And so when the Trump administration says everything is going through Palantir, not enough people really paid much attention to that. Now people are starting to wonder, wait a minute, what is exactly the role of Palantir? Who is Palantir and what do they intend to do? The New York Times ran a story just a couple weeks ago, May 30th, the title of which was Trump Taps Palantir to Compile Data on Americans. Quote, the Trump administration has expanded Palantir's work across the federal government in recent months. The company has received more than $113 million in federal government spending since Mr. Trump took office, according to public records, including additional funds from existing contracts as well as new contracts with the Department of Homeland Security and the Pentagon. This does not include a $795 million contract that the Department of Defense awarded the company last week, which has not been spent. The push has put a key Palantir product called Foundry into at least 4 federal agencies, including DHS and the Health and Human Services Department. Now, obviously, when you think about your rights, your privacy rights, there are few privacy rights more sacred than things about your health or your family's health or the treatments you seek. And obviously, Homeland Security has enormous databases. That was created in 2002. This department was once controversial, like most things that were once controversial. Everyone just accepts that we now have a Department of Homeland Security, even though we previously never needed one, including the Cold War, during the Cold War. And so just 2 of the agencies where Foundry and Palantir products are being now secretly placed contain among the most invasive and sweeping information about the American population. And remember, this is all being done in the context of a political movement, of an administration that vowed to rein all this in, to ensure that the government wasn't spying on people anymore, that it didn't have the ability to abuse its powers of surveillance in order to harm political enemies, in order to harm other people. The article goes on, quote, while adopting Foundry, which organizes and analyzes data, while that paves the way for Mr. Trump to easily merge information from different agencies, the government official said, Palantir's selection as a chief vendor for the project was driven by Elon Musk's Doge, according to the government officials. At least 3 Doge members formerly worked at Palantir, while 2 others had worked at companies funded by Peter Thiel, an investor and founder of Palantir. Palantir has long worked with the federal government. Its government contracts span the Department of Defense and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. During the pandemic, the Biden administration signed a contract with Palantir to manage the distribution of vaccines through the CDC. At the IRS, Palantir engineers joined in April to use Foundry to organize data gathered on American taxpayers, 2 government officials said. So they're also at the CDC and the IRS. The IRS being the agency that most aggressively and invasively tracks all of your financial data, all of your earnings, all of your assets. Their work began as a way to create a single searchable database for the IRS, but has since expanded, they said. A Treasury Department representative said that the IRS was uploading its systems to serve American taxpayers and that Palantir was contracted to complete the work with IRS engineers. The goal of uniting data on Americans has been quietly discussed by Palantir engineers, employees said, adding that they were worried about collecting so much sensitive data in one place. The company's security practices are only as good as the people using them, they said. They characterized some Doge employees as sloppy on security and as not following protocols and how personal devices were used. Now, this is one of the things that I recall during the Snowden controversy and the reporting and the debates that it spawned, this extreme irony that we were able to reveal how invasive, how sweeping, how limitless the information was that the NSA, unbeknownst to everybody, was collecting on American citizens without the warrants required by the constitutional law. And I remember very well one day the NSA is kind of trying to scope around for different excuses, said, oh, don't worry, we're very, very vigilant in the security measures that we use. We keep your data very, very safe. You don't have to worry. And of course, one of the reasons that was not a very satisfactory answer was the concern was that the NSA itself was going to abuse that information and had done so. But also it was very hard to say that, oh, don't worry, these security systems are so unbreakable, so reliable, when Edward Snowden had just right under their noses taken enormous amounts of that data without having any slight idea on the part of the NSA that they had done so. So much of this sounds familiar. Oh, don't worry, we are centralizing all data about you in an unprecedented way. It's not just some of it's at the NSA, some of it's at the IRS, some of it's at CDC, some of it's at Homeland Security. We're now centralizing all of those agencies in one private company, Palantir. And we're being asked to believe that Palantir's goals are benevolent. The people running Palantir are going to handle this information responsibly and without abuse, and that somehow this information will be kept safe so that others who have more malevolent intentions are incapable of using it. I think it's very important that to note that Palantir was founded in 2002, because obviously that was at the height of the war on terror, when people began to see not just the potential for government empowerment through a surveillance state, but also privatized surveillance, which was and became a massive booming industry. And if we could just go back a little bit to 2002, there was an event that happened at the time that I think a lot of people have forgotten about. It's involving John Poindexter, so if we could go back to the prior document. John Poindexter had been a government official in the Reagan and Bush administrations, Bush 41, and he was very controversial because he was central to the Iran-Contra scandal. He ended up as one of the more disgraced figures of that scandal. For those of you who don't know, in brief, Congress had passed a law saying that the US government was barred from funding rebel groups in Central America because we were trying to overthrow governments there. It was a very bloody war, so Congress passed a law prohibiting the use of funds for financing basically terrorist groups that we were funding in order to overthrow governments, in order to maintain control of El Salvador, the Contras in Nicaragua. And the Reagan administration security apparatus decided they didn't care about that law. They wanted to ignore that law. They wanted to fund the Contras and other proxy groups in Central America anyway, but they couldn't get the money from Congress because Congress banned it. And so they instead sold arms, very sophisticated arms, to Iran, very sophisticated missiles and arms. Secretly, they sold it to the Iranian regime, took the money from that sale, and then gave it to Nicaragua and El Salvador and the other groups Congress had barred them from funding. And John Poindexter was at the center of this. He kind of became disgraced. And yet, in 2002, the Bush administration decided to create one of the creepiest sounding agencies that you could possibly imagine. It was called the Office of Information Awareness. And there you see it on the screen. This is from 2002, the overview of the Information Awareness Office. And here was Dr. John Poindexter, who Donald Rumsfeld tapped to become the director of the Information Awareness Office of DARPA. And as they described it, the idea was to have total information awareness. I think we have the text here. It's called, as they described it, quote, total information awareness, a proto-system, is our answer. We must be able to detect, classify, identify, and track terrorists so that we may understand their plans and act to prevent those from being executed. To protect our rights, we must ensure that our systems track the terrorists and those that mean us harm. And it talks about how these programs are focused on making total information awareness, TIA, real. It's a high-level visionary functional view of the worldwide system, somewhat oversimplified. One of the significant new data sources that needs to be mined to discover and track terrorists is the transaction space. And even for 2002, when people were almost accepting every kind of authoritarian measure offered because they were justified by, oh, don't worry, we're just using this to protect terrorists, we're not going to use it against you, your rights aren't endangered. Creating an office of total information awareness as the name, led by Dr. John Poindexter under the auspices of Donald Rumsfeld, even that was a bridge too far, even for 2002. But it was very revealing of the limitless aspirations that the US government had and knew that they could exploit 9/11 in order to create, essentially telling the American people that we can't have any more limits on our ability to collect information about you. And out of that grew this office called Total Information Awareness that, although the office was named in just too much of an Orwellian and creepy way for the American population, the American media to accept, became the ambition of the US government. That is what ultimately led to the NSA programs that were designed to collect all information on American citizens without warrants, to file it, to store it, to be able to analyze it. That became the mindset of not just the US government, but of corporations seeking to become the providers of the technology that would enable it, and the vastly lucrative contracts that would come from that. And it was in that ethos, in that time period, seeking to exploit that opportunity, that Peter Thiel and Alex Karp created Palantir to become this newly agile, highly sophisticated version of a company that had unprecedented power to collect and store and data mine information about hundreds of millions of people. That is the impetus that gave rise to Palantir, and it continues to this very day to be their primary mission. And that primary mission is now being fulfilled, I think, beyond anyone's wildest dreams, given that the Trump administration is empowering them to be the company, the deep state, surveillance state company, through which all information that the US government maintains about American citizens is run through and stored through and is managed by one company, essentially overseeing the entire information collecting apparatus of the US government. Here from the Intelligencer magazine, this is back in 2020, September 2020. Is Palantir's crystal ball just smoke and mirrors? And here's the text. Back in 2003, John Poindexter got a call from Richard Pearl. For those of you who don't remember, Richard Pearl was sort of like the darkest of dark neocons. An old friend from their days serving together in the Reagan administration. Pearl, one of the architects of the Iraq War, which started that year, wanted to introduce Poindexter to a couple of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs who were starting a software company. This firm, Palantir Technologies, was helping to pull together data collected by a wide range of spy agencies. Everything from human intelligence and cell phone calls to travel records and financial transactions to help identify and stop terrorists planning attacks on the United States. Poindexter, a retired rear admiral who had been forced to resign as Reagan's national security advisor over his role in the Iran-Contra scandal, wasn't exactly the kind of starry-eyed idealist who usually appeals to Silicon Valley visionaries. Returning to the Pentagon after the 9/11 attacks, he had begun researching ways to develop a data mining program that was as spooky as its name, Total Information Awareness. His work, dubbed a, quote, super Snoop's dream by conservative columnist William Safire, was a precursor to the National Security Agency's sweeping surveillance program that were exposed a decade later by Edward Snowden. Yet Poindexter was precisely the person Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, the co-founders of Palantir, wanted to meet. Their new company was similar in ambition to what Poindexter had tried to create at the Pentagon, and they wanted to pick the brain of the man now widely viewed as the godfather of modern surveillance. Poindexter told me he had suggested to Karp and Thiel that they partner with one of the companies that worked on Total Information Awareness. But the two men weren't interested. Quote, they were a bunch of young, arrogant guys, Poindexter said, and they were convinced that they could do it all. And I guess on some level, that arrogance ended up being vindicated, because now, just a couple of decades later, they are in exactly the position that 10 years ago we revealed that the NSA was in, that created so much controversy. And the fact that there was such a strong reaction across the political spectrum, such a strong revulsion to the idea that the NSA had the ability and exercised that ability to collect data on all Americans, something this part of our government was never supposed to do, collect dossiers on American citizens en masse, is now being done by a kind of sketchy and shady privatized corporation that was created right after 9/11 to exploit the surveillance state opportunities. and that this information is being concentrated in this one company across all government agencies in a way that not even the NSA, back when we were revealing the Snowden reporting, could have imagined, is something that I think quite obviously merits far more attention about what Palantir is, what it believes, and what it's doing. All right, you have heard all the hype. Maybe you've seen the new launches sell out, but if you still haven't tried 1775 coffee yet, this is your shot because they've just launched their 1775 starter kit. And the first drop is limited to just 1,000 units. The starter kit isn't some basic sampler pack. I know there's a lot of sampler packs, basic sampler packs all over the internet. This is not one of those. It's a full-on pack of caffeine freedom. It's a bold dark roast that hits hard and strong. It's a smooth medium roast for strength without bitterness, very soothing. And Vitality mushroom coffee for clean energy, laser focus, and zero crash. It's all single origin, small batch, mold free, and toxin free. Plus you're also getting a gold spoon clip, because plastic has no place in real coffee or real values. We're talking about a gold spoon clip. You get a frother that is built to last. A lot of frothers are designed to wear out or break very quickly. This, however, in contrast, is a frother built to last. And you get a Matte Black 1775 tumbler to drink your coffee in style. $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. This is for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler, it is worth it. Go to 1775coffee.com/Glenn and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something, just like Rumble does. Start your day with coffee that actually backs what you believe. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.